So as you saw in the last video, we found some gold in that crevice, and actually it's pretty good gold. But it takes so long to run it through a pan, classify it all those times, vacuum it up and everything, you're not going to be able to get enough gold at the end of the day to really make it worth your while. Now if you're new to gold, finding those little specks, that's exciting. But once you've done it for a little while and you've seen the little specks of gold, you want to start seeing bigger and bigger pieces of it. And if you can't see bigger pieces, you at least want to see bigger piles of it. So we have to have a sluice, we have to have a way to move the dirt faster. Now if you're walking out of the river, as high banking is, you're going to need to have water running your sluice. You can't be carting your buckets to the river usually because the river's too far away, and oftentimes the river doesn't have enough water in it, has too much water, there's no place to set a sluice in the current, whatever. So that's what a high banker is for. This is a sluice that you see over here. We'll go into it in a little bit more detail in a minute. But basically, we pump water up from the river in a trash pump, 2-inch pump, runs it to the sluice, tailings come out the bottom end, we put tailings in the sluice and we process it. So it makes it a lot faster. But even that is only good for some things. What you see in front of me here is a boom. Basically, this is like a dredge. It's a suction nozzle, 2.5 inch, and the high pressure pump blows up here through this hose. It comes in through this nozzle, aiming up, makes a vacuum here that sucks air and water down from the bottom and blows up that pipe into the sluice. Well, this is about the same as using a shovel in terms of the amount of material it can move. So it's not that great a thing this far out of the water, because we have about 10 foot of head here, 10 foot of elevation difference between here and the river, which means that the pump is having to work harder, and so we're not getting the full amount of pressure we should be getting. So really, it's not a very practical tool here. A little bit closer to the river is much more practical and it can move more dirt. But it can suck dirt off the walls, and I did this for a full day with the boom here, and did a pretty good job. It got us about 1 gram of gold that day, so it wasn't too bad. That's about $40 right now, so I'm not crazy about it, but it's okay. Anyway, the nice thing about it is it sucks it right up off the bottom. You don't have to worry about classifying it, and takes it right up through the hose and dumps it in the sluice, so you don't have to touch it and unload it into the sluice again. So it does eliminate 2 jobs, and that is worth something even if it is a little bit slower. So we're going to turn it on here, and then we're going to show you how this works. But first, the basic process is we have bedrock that I'm standing on. And I've already cleaned this up several times, but this is still new dirt that has been coming in off that wall over there. We've been working our way this direction. And so you see the bank here. We've got about 2 foot of dirt on top of it. We've been taking a pick, like so, and breaking this bank loose. Now we find big rocks in there, and the rocks have to be moved, pulled out, like that. Throw these over there. And once we've broken off a little bit of dirt, we take the fork here, and we pull the bigger rocks through the dirt. Because the boom will not take these big rocks, and they'll just get in the way over and over again as we're trying to suck up the smaller ones. We can get the little things like this through there okay. They may not be crazy about it, but most of the time they'll go through. But things like this have to be gotten out of the way. So we rake those out, and then we have a basically loose substance that we can push right into the boom. But to do that, we have to have some water in here. So we're going to take the tail into the boom, the one we have going into the sluice. We're going to aim it down into this puddle here. And we're going to get some water in this hole first. That way we can start sucking up this loose stuff I just made. So this is pressurized water coming out of that boom. Now it might be very tempting just to go ahead and aim this at the wall and wash that wall down. That's called hydraulicking, and if you get caught doing that, you can get in big fines and big trouble, because they did a lot of ecological damage hydraulicking these mountains back in the 1930s before it was shut down. And it's good reason why it stopped people from doing it, because it really does do a lot of damage. But the point is, for us, it's a very efficient way of mining, but we can't do that most of the time. So we're just going to lay it right here, let this hole fill up, and then we'll use our boom to start pulling it up here and in through the hole. So that's enough water. So now we're going to put our hose up here into the header box. And the idea of this is basically just to slow down the water and any tailings that you throw in here through the boom, catch it here and run it that way, rather than letting it splash all over the place. You need to have the water going through the sluice slowed down a little bit so it's not just blowing away your material as fast as it gets set in there. You need to be working at a consistent, even speed. And the same goes for the material you suck up with the boom. So basically, you put it down here in the water, and you can feel for a suction, and you'll start sucking on your hand a bit. And you push it up against the wall that you're trying to suck off, or the floor you're trying to suck out. Keeping it below water level works the best. And then you feel it start pulling material. Hear that sound? That's the sound of gravel being moved through the sluice. And basically, you just work this back and forth like this, loosening up rocks as you go, as you need to. You'll notice after a while you start to accumulate larger and larger material down there that's in your way. And after a while, you'll also notice you probably lose suction, especially up at this high out of the water. If you pull up like this, the material drains back through. When you stop hearing rocks clanking around down here in the tube, you'll know it's working again. Put it back down there and suck up more material. As I said, it's not really faster than a shovel, but it does do things the shovel can't do, like clean off the bottom of bedrock, for example. And if you're a little closer to the water, it does work better where you have more pressure, because it tends to get clogged and run a little bit too slow up here. And so once I get this clean, which I basically have it now, we'll start breaking off more of this and run it to the sluice. So as I said, we need to find a way to process more material. I went back to the clubhouse and I talked to the people who run these claims, and I found out that this had been a site that was used for one of the club outings. And I had known that up front. That's one of the reasons I dug here. But I had heard that they had found an ounce in about 5 hours with about 20 people. I went back and dug a little bit more and I found it was actually about half an ounce in about 5 hours with about 40 people, which does make a difference. Also, I found out they weren't prospecting the way I was prospecting. They realized too that they couldn't process up enough material in the amount of time that they had. So what they did was they pumped water up into a pit up on top of this bank, and they siphoned it out into a good-sized hose, like a 2-inch hose, and they ran it down and they sprayed that hose at the walls. And that washed off the dirt and the soil down into the ditch here, and then they ran it down this hill over there into a sluice. And they did it on the walls over there. You can see the barrel rocks, and over here as well, all the way down this bank. And that allowed them to move a lot more dirt than I can move, because water is a really good way of moving dirt. This is kind of like hydraulicking, but hydraulicking is very illegal because you pump water up and you spray it on the walls. It's not allowed since 1930, I think. But since this is a gravity siphon, it's legal. So I am not set up to do that, and so I really can't do what they did. But if I was, I could probably find a half an ounce here, every day for a little while. But I've got to go, and I can't finish this. But that's how you have to think your way through the problem. Our problem was we were finding a lot of gold, relatively speaking. We just weren't able to move the dirt fast enough. And this is how we would have been able to move it faster and been able to make some serious gold out of this. Unfortunately, we find out too late and we have to go. One other thing I need to mention about high banking before we get off this video is that one of the very important rules is that when you're high banking, you're usually pumping water out of the river, running dirt that's not in the river to start with through the sluice, and then the water has to go someplace. It's very important that that water does not go back into the river. It's a very strict law, because if you do that, you wind up making silt in the river, and that can disturb fish habitat and so on. So what you need to make sure you do is that the water that comes out of your sluice goes down here and catches in some sort of a depression, something that's barricaded off from the river. And if you have to stop pumping every so often to let it drain out and sink into the ground, you have to do that, because you can't get any water back in the river once it's had material washed through it. So anyway, that's high banking. You can do good gold this way, but you've got to find the right place and you've got to do the legwork to find out how to do it, and that's what we've been doing here.